Most JRPGs follow the classic tale of a hero destined to save the world, a battle of good versus evil where light is always gonna prevail. But what if that wasn't the case? What if the lines between right and wrong were even more blurred, and the journey wasn't just about saving the world, but instead surviving it? If you're tired of predictable plots and looking for something darker, more intense, and emotionally gripping, you're in the right place. These are my top 10 JRPGs with dark and mature stories, games that don't just entertain, but they're gonna leave you with a lasting impact. Some will force you to face tough moral choices, and others will take you on a heartbreaking or tragic journey, and a few might even haunt you long after the credits roll. So go ahead and grab a snack, get settled in, and let's go ahead and dive into our first game on the list. Lost Odyssey is viewed as another branch in the Final Fantasy family tree, similar to Phantasia and Neo Dimension, due to it being crafted by Hironobu Sakaguchi, the creator of Final Fantasy. Lost Odyssey set in the world teetering on the brink of a magic-fueled industrial revolution, and you'll play as Kaim, an immortal warrior who's lived for thousands of years, yet suffers from amnesia, unable to recall his past. I know we escaped the good versus evil tropes, but we're still probably gonna have a lot of the amnesia and other JRPG tropes on this list. But throughout the game, Kaim regains his lost memories in the form of short stories, and those are going to be called 1,000 Years of Dreams. And these stories force him to face the pains brought back by those memories returning to him. Unlike Kaim, the mortals cannot outrun time. So several of the heartbreaking stories reinforce the sorrow of watching your loved ones grow old and pass away while you remain unchanged because you're immortal. Lost Odyssey uses a classic turn-based combat system with a few adjustments to it. You'll form a party of up to 5 characters, dividing them into front and back row based on their strengths. Additionally, the battle system is going to use a ring system where you're going to use time-based button impresses to maximize attack efficiency, similar to what we're seeing with Clair Obscur Expedition 33. One of the more interesting mechanics is how immortals and the mortals interact in battle. Immortals don't die permanently if they're knocked out, they're gonna revive in battle after a few turns. And now that may sound OP, but to combat that, immortals have to learn skills from mortals, giving you an incentive to keep both types in your party. Battles can sometimes feel slow, especially given the long animations, but enjoying the battle theme should keep you locked in. Honestly, just listening to the OST alone will be enough to convince you to give this game a shot. Eclipse of Time with the vocals is one of the songs that just makes you stop and just start pondering life. When scripting this video, I put it on and I was like, you know, I gotta stop. I need to take a few laps around the cul-de-sac just to reflect on things. All that being said, Lost Odyssey is a mature, thought-provoking JRPG, one that feels like a classical Final Fantasy, yet something entirely its own. Unlike many JRPGs where the protagonist is a chosen hero to fight justice, Tales of Berseria flips the script. Instead of good versus evil, Berseria focuses on the clash between emotions and reason. You play as Velvet, whose life is shattered when an event known as the Scarlet Night happens again for the second time. During the second Scarlet Night, Velvet's sick brother is sacrificed by her brother-in-law, Artorias, as part of a ritual known as Advent, to maintain order for the people. Artorias attempts to use Velvet for the Advent as well, but she fights back and the demon blight possesses her arm, mutating it, turning her into a demon with the ability to absorb other demons. Following the events of that night, and this is all early in the beginning of the game, Velvet's gonna be imprisoned, but she swears to seek revenge on Artorias, and that's what sets up the journey for Berseria. And one of the things that I really appreciate is that it makes you question who's truly right. Is Velvet right because she acts on raw emotion, or is Artorias right because he seeks to maintain absolute order? It's these moral dilemmas that make me love shows like The 100 who do this as well. Realistically, are you gonna save 100 strangers or are you gonna save your 10 closest friends? And I feel like that, I like that moral gray area that it creates, but me personally, hey, ain't no gray area. I'm going my 10 closest friends. I'm sorry to all them strangers, but hey, that's just my perception. I feel like depending on where your moral compass is, this is really going to change person to person, which is why I like that type of conversation. The gameplay features the signature things you can expect from the Tales of series, like arts, the linear motion combat system, and the skits, but they attempt to build upon these with new mechanics like the Break Soul system. The Break Soul system allows for each character to use a unique ability that lets them perform powerful moves at the cost of losing soul gauge points. Now, I don't know if a lot of people share this opinion with me, but I personally really like the full-size character models that they went with this Tales of game, as opposed to with some of the older Tales of games where they used the chibi-like models. But with those life-size models, you're gonna get to see Velvet's edgy gothic character design, and I feel like this is a perfect for those fans who are like into the anti-hero type of stick and that type of trope. So when you combine that with its dark, mature story featuring compelling characters, Tales of Berseria is a sure shot for me at least to make my top 10 dark JRPGs. So this list is gonna be dark JRPGs that are currently out right now, but later on this month, Clair Obscur Expedition 33 is going to be releasing, and that's going to be an extremely dark game. And I'm actually doing a giveaway for this on Twitter. If you want to go over and get entered on that, I'm going to be giving away a free copy of the game. But if you don't have a Twitter, let me know in the comments down below, because I am considering moving these giveaways to the YouTube side of things to help out the community more. And while you're down there, feel free to help me get this video to 100 likes and consider subscribing to the channel. But now that I got my shameless plug in, let's move to the next game on the list. Persona 3 Reload reintroduces one of the more dark and mature stories in JRPG history. With Reload, you're going to follow a group of high school students as they investigate a mysterious phenomenon known as the Dark Hour. And during the Dark Hour, it's like a hidden time that exists between midnight and the start of a new day. And during that hour, ordinary people are going to be encased in coffin-like objects, and creatures called shadows are going to roam the world freely. In addition to the Dark Hour, people also start experiencing a mysterious condition called apathy syndrome that leaves them in like a lifeless vegetative state. But what makes Persona 3's story truly captivating is its exploration of grief and existence, and even things like mortality. Each member of SEIS is battling their own trauma, and the game's social links dive into like really relatable human struggles like regret, loneliness, and illness. Now, Persona 3 Reload is a remake, and this remake enhances the experience with modern visuals, quality of life improvements, and a fully voice-acted script, making even the smallest interactions feel more immersive than they ever have been before. Combat in Persona 3 Reload is turn-based, but centers heavily on exploiting weaknesses until all enemies are knocked down and performing an all-out attack. Hidden enemy weaknesses or getting critical hits is going to give you another turn, and you can pass that to the teammate or perform a second attack, speeding up combat for most turn-based JRPGs and making it feel really fast-paced. You'll have to ascend a tower known as Tartarus, which is a grind, but I feel like the social simulation side of things give you a break from that and kind of break things up a little. I mentioned this earlier, but every social link is going to be fully voice acted, and I feel that a good bit of them are actually pretty well written to make them enjoyable. With revamped combat and the refined social mechanics, I feel like Persona 3 is a strong reminder of why this story resonated deeply with so many people. I did a fully detailed review on this already if you want to check that out, so I'm not going to spend too much more time on it here. Final Fantasy Tactics is what many consider to be the best tactical JRPG of all time, and a portion of that is contributed to its dark story. It's rumored that Final Fantasy Tactics will be getting a remake soon though, in case you want to hold off on it, but for now, let's discuss what makes this game so great. The story follows Ramza, a highborn cadet placed in the middle of a military conflict known as the Lions War, where two opposing noble factions are going to be gunning for the throne of the kingdom after its ruler died. What makes Final Fantasy Tactics story so exceptional is going to be its Game of Thrones style complexities. There's going to be tons of betrayals, power struggles, and moral dilemmas that are going to help shape the narrative and make things feel more complex. One thing that really stands out about the plot is how it challenges you to question the nature of heroism and the cost of ambition. When it comes to gameplay, the difficulty and character investments make progression extremely rewarding. Since it's a tactical JRPGs, battles are going to happen on a grid-based battlefield where at the start of battle you can strategically place your units, and you do that in ways that you can try and attempt to outsmart your opponent. Now, all of that could be a waste because the game does throw you curveballs to kind of keep things fresh, and things like terrain elevation, environmental obstacles, and the placement of allies and enemies are going to play a crucial role in that, especially when it comes to designing and planning out your battle tactics. At the beginning of the game, characters are going to start with basic job classes such as a squire and a chemist, but as those characters progress through the game, you can unlock and switch between different job classes to suit different playstyles and strategies. But when you do that, characters are going to have separate levels for each job that they master. The job tree though can get complex and require a ton of time investment per character, But that's the beauty of Final Fantasy Tactics and why a lot of us love these types of JRPGs. Now, you may know the permadeath mechanic from Fire Emblem, and they've in modern games allowed options to turn that off. But with Final Fantasy Tactics, permadeath is enabled with no setting to turn it off. If one of your units that you invested all of this time and resources into building up falls in battle and isn't revived in time, like all that investment is gone and it's just lost permanently unless you save scum and just restart the battle. But even at times, that's not an option with how long some of these battles kind of drag on. I wouldn't be surprised if that's something they put a setting in for if the remake actually is true and does happen, but I feel like Final Fantasy Tactics is an amazing game for someone looking for a mature story that's going to hit hard and keep you politically intrigued, similar to Game of Thrones. Valkyrie Profile is a series of JRPGs, but for this video, we're going to be focusing on the first installment. As you're probably seeing from the gameplay, Valkyrie Profile is an older game with its initial American release being in the 2000s, but it's recently been brought to modern consoles, going under the name Valkyrie Profile Lilith. Now, Valkyrie Profile Lilith is going to pull heavily on Norse mythology for its story. You control Lilith Valkyrie, a warrior of God tasked by Odin with gathering souls of the fallen heroes to prepare for Ragnarok. And for those of you not familiar with Norse mythology, basically Ragnarok is the battle to decide the fate of all creations. You'll play as Lilith traveling across Midgar, and that's going to be the human realm, witnessing the tragic deaths of various characters and guiding their souls to Valhalla. Now, these stories are often designed to tug at your heart by telling stories, centered around things like fate, redemption, or even, I guess, probably primarily sacrifice. And then as you go through your journey, Lilith is going to learn more about her original human life, where her memories were removed upon her becoming a Valkyrie. And there it goes again, that pesky amnesia trait. And I skipped it up on Persona 3 Reload because it's in there as well. But it's something that you can't really escape with a lot of JRPGs, and it's kind of baked into some of their storytelling to try and make it a little bit more interesting. As for the gameplay side of things, Valkyrie Profile is going to blend side-scrolling exploration with a turn-based battle system that's going to emphasize timing and party synergy. Each party member is assigned to a button, and their attacks occur when you press that respective button. Sequencing the order of attacks properly and timing them will allow you to do higher damage and also execute combos. The recruitment of the fallen soldiers also isn't just some random gimmick. Each and every one that you recruit is going to have their own history that's going to tie into the larger world. You'll also have to start making executive decisions to decide which one of these fallen soldiers you're going to send to Freya in Valhalla and which ones you're going to keep in your party for the Battle of Ragnarok. Valkyrie Profile is going to be exploring the obligation of personal desire and obligation, and I feel like exploring that dark, somber topic of death as a focal point is definitely going to be why it lands a spot on this list for me. Fuga Melodies of Steel is a JRPG that from the outside looking in can be deceptively childish, but in actuality, it's a story of children going to war and coming to terms with what comes with that. I always say this when I talk about Fuga Melodies of Steel, but it really reminds me a lot of the Gundam series, where they're highlighting the ramifications mentally of sending children to war. You'll play as a group of kids who survive an attack on their village, and in the midst of war, they discover a sentient war machine and learn to pilot it in a desperate attempt to save their loved ones. As you play, you'll find the kids put in these tough situations where they're going to be forced to make choices that I feel like no child should have to make. And it's going to be pretty deep things like what sacrifices are they willing to make in order to survive. Gameplay revolves around navigating different paths, one offering tougher challenges but it's going to give you bigger rewards, and the other being an easier route with fewer risk but also less rewards. Battles happen aboard that sentient tank that I mentioned earlier, equipped with 3 turrets, and each turret is going to be manned by 2 children. You'll be able to strategically assign your squad based on elemental affinities and unique abilities to exploit enemy weaknesses. In your leisure time between battles, relationships can be strengthened through minigames, conversation, and shared meals, enhancing synergy between 2 characters that are going to be working on the same turret, and that's going to be the 2 characters that establish that bond together. But on top of all that, I think one of the cruelest mechanics I've seen in a game is the soul cannon. The soul cannon guarantees victory, but at the cost of permanently sacrificing one of the children, which can't be undone. Now, whoever came up with this mechanic, easily a very sick individual with a very sick mind, but it's one of the darker things that earns it a spot on this list. At first glance, like I said, the game's art style can seem deceiving, but it delivers a mature story that's going to linger with you after its 19-hour journey concludes. I think the fact that it involves children who actually look like children, despite the fact that they're not human, makes the story hit even harder. Most of the JRPGs on this list made it due to tackling more emotionally mature topics in their stories, but Shadow Hearts is legit a horror-inspired JRPG. If I'm being honest, Shadow Hearts is really the JRPG that inspired this list, and it fits the bill for everything you could want in a dark JRPG. Shadow Hearts is known for its dark gothic atmosphere and unique combat system for the time it was released. The game is set in alternate historical periods, combining real-world locations and events with fantasy and supernatural elements. The story is going to follow Yuri, a human with an ability to capture and transform into monsters, as he's protecting Alice from an evil magician. Since the setting is an alternate version of the early 20th century, you're going to be traveling across several destinations from a war-torn China to Europe. And adding to that dark gothic tone, when the protagonist Yuri transforms into different monsters, it's also going to change his appearance in combat. Within this dark setting, Shadow Hearts attempts to also weave in offbeat humor, shooting for a blend of a horror game with comedy as well. A signature of Shadow Hearts is the Judgment Ring, and this is going to be a combat mechanic that adds an element of skill and time into its turn-based battle system. You have to hit specific zones on the spinning ring to perform an action successfully, and if you miss your timing, it's it, you just lose your turn. Recently, a spiritual successor titled Penny Blood was launched on Kickstarter, and I believe it's been fully funded, and it's promising to carry the legacy of Shadowheart with a fresh take on its blend of horror and RPG mechanics. Now, it was originally scheduled to release last month, but obviously it's not here, and that's since been delayed with no further date. Final Fantasy Type 0 is one of the darkest entries in the Final Fantasy franchise until Final Fantasy 16. Unlike traditional Final Fantasy games, which usually involve a warrior of light going to save the world, Type 0 delivers a world without hope, where death is permanent, morality is blurred, and heroism is going to come at a cost. There are no miracle rescues, no last-minute victories, just the reality of what you can expect when it comes to war in real life. Soldiers, civilians, and even at times children are going to be caught in bloodshed. Without spoiling too much, the game has multiple endings, but the true ending is one of the darkest ones in Final Fantasy history. Now, the story is going to focus on Class 0, a group of 14 students from a magical academy in the Dominion of Rubrum, and when the Militesi Empire launches an assault on the other crystal states, seeking to take control of their crystals, that's when Class 0 is going to be mobilized for the defense of Rubrum. Combat is going to be real-time action-based, similar to what you've seen in Kingdom Hearts or Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core, and you can put any of the 14 members of Class 0 into your party. Each are going to have their own unique fighting style, weapons, and abilities. When in battle though, you're not able to just use all 14, that would be ridiculous and extremely cluttered, but you're going to be able to take 3 of those characters, which you can swap between at any time. Another thing about gameplay is that some of the missions are also going to require you to play a war minigame before you can start them. But you're going to spend majority of your time in the academy when you're not doing these missions, and it's going to have a time-based system. It's not set up like calendars with Persona, but doing missions do take a certain amount of time, and that's going to tick down until you have to go on the next main story quest. Now, if you're looking for a darker Final Fantasy game similar to 16, Type 0 delivers an unforgettable story for you. Shin Megami Tensei Digital Devil Saga is a spin-off of the Megami Tensei series, and it was actually built using the same engine as Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne. The game takes place in the Junkyard, where different factions fight for dominance. You'll play as Serf, the leader of a tribe, alongside his allies, each struggling to survive in the world where only one of those factions can ascend to Nirvana. Now, in order to ascend to Nirvana, which is essentially a paradise, you're going to have to bring the shaman, who goes by the name of Sarah, to the temple. This is going to prove that you are worthy and allow you to ascend, but like I said, only one of these 6 different factions, I believe, in the Junkyard can do that. Now, early on, an explosion in the Junkyard is going to infect most of the soldiers with the virus, allowing them to transform into demons with the hunger for eating human flesh. So the only way for them to survive is to consume others, forcing them into a world that's going to be kill or be killed. Like other Shin Megami Tensei games, Digital Devil Saga uses the press turn combat system, which we also saw recently with Metaphor ReFantasio. Landing attacks exploit enemy weaknesses and grant an additional action, while missing or using an ineffective attack is going to waste a turn. However, unlike other Shin Megami Tensei games, where you summon demons, here, each character is actually going to be transforming into the demon on their own, with each form having unique abilities. This keeps the combat focusing on party synergy and skill customization rather than recruiting monsters. Since there's going to be no monster fusions, Digital Devil Saga uses the mantra system for you to grow stronger with your party. It's basically just like a skill progression system that's going to allow you to customize each party member to your liking. .hack.GU is a trilogy developed by CC2, which is actually the same studio behind Fuga Melodies of Steel, which we discussed earlier. The game takes place in the world R2, a fictional MMORPG filled with guilds, player killers known as PKs, and hidden dangers. You'll play as Haseo, a vengeful anti-hero known by others in the MMO as the Terror of Death. Haseo is obsessed with hunting down a mysterious PKer named Tri-Edge, who put his friend Shino into a real-life coma after attacking and PKing her in the game. I know what you're thinking, but this was Sword Art Online before Sword Art Online existed. In the opening scene, after months of searching, Haseo finally encounters Tri-Edge and attempts to kill him, but Tri-Edge is just like bop, 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 like Haseo's easily outmatched. But in this battle, Tri-Edge uses an illegal skill on Haseo, which corrupts his character data and resets him to level 1, so all of that badass Haseo the Terror of Death is just immediately wiped away with this skill. Now, while the series has a dedicated fan base, it can be a bit harder to get into if you're trying to do it today. Unlike modern JRPGs that offer a self-contained story and experience, .hack.GU requires you to have some prior knowledge of the .hack universe in order to get the full context, and I feel like watching Hack Roots, the anime, is almost essential because it's going to be covering key elements for the story that were cut from the game, and this is going to happen during a 6-month time skip, but this is going to also explain Haseo's ascension to becoming the Terror of Death. But if you're looking to just immerse yourself in a series of games in like this expansive world, I feel like .hack.GU is worth giving a try. These are going to be my top 10 JRPGs with dark and mature stories that hit hard, but if you're looking for 10 JRPGs that are going to hook you day one, feel free to check out this video right here. If I missed any solid entries that you feel should have made the list, feel free to drop those in the comments down below. But thank you for your time, and I'll catch you in the next one.